we figured it out in 2019. We were gone 58% of the time on an adventure someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just loving life and traveling all over. And that just came to an end. Poof.
There's a place in Southern Oregon filled with gorgeous natural beauty, friendly yet independent people, and a mild, comfortable climate. That place is called Grants Pass. These are the stories of the people that live and work in Josephine County. These are the movers and shakers that make this place the best. This is Grants Pass VIP.
Dr. Cory S. Fawcett grew up in Medford, Oregon, and was third-generation Medford Black Tornado. After graduating, he conquered 13 more years of training to become a surgeon. He received a bachelor's degree in biology from Stanford University, his MD from Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, and finished a 5-year surgical residency at Kern Medical Center in Bakersfield, California. He met his wife of 32 years while in medical school in Portland. They had a strong desire to live in Oregon and settled in Grants Pass in 1993, joining Grants Pass Surgical Associates on 6th Street. Dr. Fawcett practiced medicine here for 23 years before retiring. He was involved in many activities in Grants Pass and today spends his time teaching finance to physicians and other high-income earners through his Business Financial Success MD. He has published 5 books, won several awards as an author, and 4 of his books have been on the Amazon bestsellers list. His 2 boys, Brian and Keith, are now grown and also choose to stay in Grants Pass. Dr. Cory Fawcett, welcome to Grants Pass VIP.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. Why Grants Pass? You've probably been around quite a bit. Obviously, you grew up near the area, but why settle here? What drew you back here?
Well, my family and extended family all lived in Medford, and my wife's family and all of her extended family all lived in the Portland area. So when I was finishing my training in California, we decided the best place for us to be was someplace on Interstate 5 between Medford and Portland, so that we would land between our 2 families. It certainly makes Christmas and Thanksgiving a lot better if you can easily get to your families and not have to go to the airport to make that trip. So we set out to find a place where I could join a medical practice between Medford and Portland. And there were several opportunities. We interviewed in several places, and it just turned out that the dream job that I ran into happened to be in Grants Pass. Initially, I could have ended up in any place between those 2 towns. As luck would have it, I ended up here in Grants Pass. So I practiced for 23 years before retiring from medicine. And when we retired and I was teaching personal finance and through the internet and writing books, it became really clear to us that we can do that from anywhere in the country. So we actually looked at where else would we want to live. And the thing is we couldn't find a place that we liked better than Grants Pass. And so we just stayed right here, even though we could be anywhere else at that point. And in fact, now we're actually building a forever home. The last home we're going to be in, the home we're in now, we raised our children in. They've left the nest. They're adults now, and we're going to build a new home just a few blocks from where we live now. And we're going to stay right here in Grants Pass because I don't really think there's a better place to be.
Oh, fabulous. That's really cool. You've had at least these 2 very distinct careers. First off, what led you into medicine? What led you into the medical field?
When I was a little kid, the thing that got me was the television show, Christmas show, The Grinch That Stole Christmas. I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Almost everybody has seen that one. And for me, it was, I saw that the Grinch had these horrible teeth. And I thought I would be a dentist. And if I could fix the Grinch's teeth, he wouldn't be so mean. And so initially I was going to go into the dental field because of that. And that eventually evolved into medicine. And then when I finally got to medical school, I just kind of was on a straight path through school. I never really took any breaks. I got to medical school and I started practicing in the different rotations where you do different kind of specialties. And I wasn't liking anything I was doing. And I almost quit medicine because I just didn't enjoy the things I was doing. And just before I did that, I was actually recording an album. I'm also a musician, and I was recording an album of original songs during medical school, and I really loved doing that. I was thinking about leaving medicine and going into music full time. And then I had my general surgery rotation, and I just loved general surgery. It was so fun because we were actually fixing stuff. And I realized, somebody comes in with appendicitis, I take out their appendix, I saved their life. They're all better, and they're never going to have appendicitis again. And that just was very rewarding to me. And I realized that I was a fix-it man. And for me to be happy in medicine, I need to be fixing stuff. And so I just loved general surgery. I went into general surgery from there and have had a 23-year career here in Grants Pass doing it. And so I really loved that one. And then I pivoted to a new career. And the reason I pivoted is because general surgery is a pretty tough job. Late hours, a lot of stress, people on the verge of dying a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with a trauma who's badly injured. And eventually the stress and the hours were just getting to me. As you get older, it becomes harder and harder to recover from an all-nighter. And I finally decided that, it's kind of time that I do something a little easier on myself now. Even though I've loved doing this, it's time for a change. And my wife and I have been teaching financial classes here in town and really loved doing that. And I thought it would be really fun to take that message to physicians and other high earners because they weren't really getting the message. When I would talk to somebody about paying off all their debt, the doctor would say, oh, well, my nurse can do that because she doesn't have as much debt as I have. And when I would talk to the nurse about paying off your debt, she would say, well, you doctors can do it because you make a lot of money and you're rich. And so you can pay off your debt. And so each person saw the other one's strengths and saw their own weaknesses and weren't getting the picture. So I figured if I could put this in a way that the doctors could realize that I was $500,000 in debt and I paid it all off and became debt free, and you can too, they couldn't really argue that, no, it can't be done for me because of this, because they'd have to look right at me and say, hey, you're just like me and you did it, then I guess I could do it. And so I launched into this teaching doctors about personal finance and to help them get their act together financially. And nobody teaches them this. They earn a big income, but don't know what to do with it. And so I launched into doing that. I released my first book in 2016. And then that business has been growing. And it gave me a great purpose during my retirement years. I didn't want to just retire from medicine and do nothing. I'm a pretty go-getter kind of guy, type A, so I need something to do. And that became it. And I've just really enjoyed writing books and speaking and doing podcasts. And it's just been a great adventure for the second half of my life.
Oh, that's fabulous. Tell us about your books.
So I started a book. Initially, I was targeting specifically to doctors and high income people. So I started a book series called The Doctor's Guide to, and then whatever that topic was. The first one was The Doctor's Guide to Starting Your Practice Right, which was all about how to transition from residency to an attending and make that move successfully. Because you go from struggling financially as a resident with all this debt, and you're on your own. And so I wanted to kind of teach that person how to do it right. Because if you get the right first steps, everything else tends to fall together. And then after that, I followed that with a book called The Doctor's Guide to Eliminating Debt. And it's just all about why you don't want to be in debt. Debt's a pretty big burden in people's lives. And you really don't understand that until you're out of debt. When you've done it both ways, both in debt and out of debt, like I have, you really see the difference. And I wanted to portray that to people. Why is it great to be debt-free and why you don't have to be a slave to debt for the rest of your life? I like to say it's time for you to stop managing your debt and start eliminating your debt. And the next book was The Doctor's Guide to Smart Career Alternatives in Retirement. For the doctor who's ready to end his career, what options does he have and how does he make that move? And then my fourth book was on The Doctor's Guide to Real Estate Investing for Busy Professionals. And that came about because I invested in real estate while I was here working all the time. And I ended up having 64 rental units, and I managed them myself as a full-time surgeon. And people were amazed that was possible. Everybody thought, managing real estate is a full-time job. Well, it's not if you do it right. So I got so many questions about that. I decided to put a book out on how I did that. How could I manage 64 units as a full-time surgeon and busy doing other things with my kids as well? And that became my biggest hit of all. I ended up making a online course about automating your real estate that's available on my website. And the final book I wrote because of the COVID crisis, The Doctor's Guide to Navigating a Financial Crisis, for the people who were hurt, totally lost their job, or can't go back to work, or their business imploded because they were closed down. I just saw a lot of people that were hurting, and I do a lot of financial coaching, and people were asking me to point them to a book that will help them get back out of this mess. And I couldn't find a book that would do that. All of the books were about preparing for the mess to happen so that when it does, it won't be so bad. But nobody was talking about how to get out of it once you find yourself unemployed. So I set out on a mission to write that book. And in less than a month from the idea, it was on Amazon and for sale. I really put the nose to the grindstone and put that book out so people who were hurting would have a resource to get back out of that mess. That's kind of what my book series has been all about. The first and third book are pretty specific to physicians, but the rest of them are really available for anybody. Debt's pretty universal, and real estate's pretty universal, and crisis that happens is pretty universal. Whether you live in Phoenix and your house just burned up, or you just had a hurricane come through town and wipe out your whole city, or a tornado, or whatever, there's always something somewhere causing people to go into a financial crisis. I'm hoping that book will help people get back out of that problem.
That's absolutely fabulous. And kudos on being able to have that type of quick turnaround with putting together the book and getting it out there so that it's still very applicable. Like you said, it's applicable, it's timeless, but especially playing into the COVID-19 crisis, that's fabulous.
It was kind of funny because I had another book ready to release that had to do with the travel industry. And then COVID shuts everything down. And I'm thinking, well, it's a stupid time to release a book about travel. I'm not going to release the book. And that's when the other book came about. And then we thought we should just do this really fast. And I don't think I could have put a book out that fast if I hadn't already been working with a publisher and already done 4 books, or actually 5 books. So the other book was ready to go. I had already written 5 books. I really knew the process. I could do this quickly. And we did a few things that was pretty different than writing before, such as I would write one chapter, hand it to my wife to edit while I started the next chapter. Normally I'd write the whole book and give my wife a whole book to look over and see what I did wrong that she can fix, before it goes to the publisher. But we were in a hurry. And so we did it chapter by chapter, and she was editing at the same time I was writing. And in 2 weeks from the idea, we actually turned the finished book into the publisher for final editing. It was a really cool process, but I couldn't have done that if it had been my very first book, I don't think.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, let's take a break from that conversation. I wanted to bring up a question for you. During these crazy times, do you feel like your business is indestructible? Most people don't. And if not, the real question is why? And what can you do to make it as indestructible as possible? Well, that's the basis of my new book, 9 Ways to Amazon-Proof Your Business. Let me talk about what we discuss in the first chapter, determine focus. So one of the main ways that you can Amazon-proof your business is by determining the focus of your business. And the real problem isn't that you're not doing enough. The real problem is that you may be doing too many things in too many places. So one of the things I suggest is decide whether your focus is going to be acquisition, ascension, or monetization. And I go into the details of what that means in this chapter. It's really the only 3 ways that you can grow your business. And if you just do that one step of determining focus, you can have a huge change in your entire business. But I also have 8 other ways to Amazon proof your business. Basically, the idea of making it competition proof to even someone as big as Amazon.com. So if you'd like to get your hands on a free copy of my book, go to AmazonProofBook.com. Sign up and you will get a free copy and get the chance to purchase a physical copy of it for a special price. In addition to that, if you happen to be in the Josephine County area or nearby and you're looking to have a speaker come and discuss these type of issues with your organization, club, or group of friends, then I have a limited calendar that I may be able to fit you into. Go check out brianjpombo.com/speaking and fill out the application. We'll be sure and get back to you on that. And now let's get back to our show. How has COVID-19 affected you other than leading you in this direction to write this book and everything? Has it had any other major impact on your life, or have you been able to kind of design a lifestyle that insulates you?
I pretty much have been unaffected by COVID completely.
Fabulous.
The bottom line, if I looked at what has changed, is I have a lot more money now. Because I was traveling all over the world, and my travel budget was $5,000 a month. I mean, we were traveling a lot. We were gone. We figured it out in 2019. We were gone 58% of the time on an adventure someplace. And I had a pretty high travel budget, and we were just loving life and traveling all over. And that just came to an end. Poof. and all of a sudden I'm, canceled. I had 2 trips already planned. One was to China. That sure didn't happen. Then the other one was a 2-week cruise to Iceland, but we had to cancel these cruises. And then we've just been sitting at home. And so we realized we've been traveling so much that home repairs had gotten behind. There was a lot of stuff that needed fixing around the house. And we had also been thinking about building a house. So we decided to take this time that we're stuck home to make all the repairs of our current house and start the project to build the new house. And they just started moving dirt last week for our new house. But we're taking advantage of the fact that I'm stuck home to do these things that need to be done at home so that when things open up again, I can travel. I was very lucky in that my rentals were not affected by COVID. Some landlords had people lose their jobs, and the state had set it up so you couldn't evict anybody. And so suddenly their income just dropped off. Most of my rentals are for seniors, and they're on fixed incomes anyway. And it turned out I didn't have a single tenant not pay their rents during this time. So that was good. But I would say the biggest thing that hurt me was not being able to go see my relatives, like my wife's mother and my mother and father. We saw them much less because of the lockdowns. Overall, COVID really hasn't been much effect in our lives. It's way different for a person who doesn't have to go to work.
Sure.
That is a complete game changer when they suddenly shut down the economy.
Absolutely. That's great. So what led you to write the first book? And tell us a little bit about that process.
So when I got started, I was trying to figure out, I had decided I wanted to retire from medicine, but I needed something else to do. I actually had told my partner, I'm going to retire. He says, great. What are you going to retire to? Well, I hadn't thought of that. I just figured I'd have plenty of time to think about it when I was done. And he pointed out to me that most of the doctors who retire without a plan are back working in 6 months because they're bored to death. So I figured, let me get my plan set up. So I actually went to a meeting about alternative careers for physicians. And it was at that meeting I ran into somebody who was writing a book about burnout, and we got to talking, and I realized that I had a book in me that I wanted to get out, and he connected me with his publisher, and we talked about it. And I had just written a book on getting out of debt. That was my big thing. I paid off $500,000 in debt and have stayed debt-free for the last 19 years. And I wanted to get that message out. And so I had written this book, And I got connected with that publisher. And when we got to talk with the publisher kind of said, well, there's a lot of doctors out there who have written a book. I'm not that interested. But if you're willing to write a series of books, I would be interested. And so we actually took that first book that I had already written, my first draft, and it got broken into 3 books.
Oh,
The Starting Your Practice Right. She said, there's too much information in here. Let's break it up. Starting Your Practice Right, Getting Out of Debt, and Retiring. Those were the 3 pieces that had been in that book. And she said, let's split those up into 3 books and do it that way. And so my first publishing deal with them was to do 3 books. With the notion that I would probably continue on, and I probably got a dozen books down the pike that are going to come out. They taught me then the methods for writing the book, how to get it outlined, how to get it on paper, how to get it all the flow, and then get it to them for editing. And I wrote that first new book in 30 days while I was still working. That was my process. So that first book, we spoke about the 1st of September, and it was available on Amazon in, I think, April of the next year. But that was kind of how that came about. It all came about of wanting to teach people to get out of debt. And then it turned out debt wasn't my first book. She wanted to do this 3 things in order, starting your practice, getting out of debt, and then retiring. And it worked out pretty good.
Oh, fabulous. So did you go into financial coaching following that? Was that the next step, or did you go straight into speaking, or how did all those things play in?
They all just kind of came together at once. So when my first book came out, I created a website which started getting traction, and then people would ask you to come speak. People would ask for help, and I started the coaching program. I do a specific financial makeover program. I went to a Brendan Burchard event on teaching you how to be a virtual expert online. And he had a coaching program. And then I went through his coaching program, became a Brendan Burchard high performance coach. That just kind of added to my ability to teach people about finance. And so the coaching thing just kind of evolved. That now is the piece that I do that is the most fun. I love the one-on-one coaching and seeing personally how a life got changed. I get emails from people that say, I read your book. It was great. It changed my life. And that's fun. But it wasn't the same as when you personally were talking with somebody and you saw the light bulbs go off and they changed their life. They're both rewarding, but I just love the one-on-one part of the coaching. And the way I set it up, there's a lot of coaching programs out there that if you decide to do it, they will assign you one of their coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to do it where I was the coach. If you passed muster and you get into my program, it's you and me one-on-one. I don't pass you off to one of my junior coaches to deal with it. I wanted to do that with you and take you through the process because it was fun for me. And so it turns out the coaching was the most fun about this whole thing. And that wasn't even where I started. You never know where you're going to go.
That's right. So where do you get most of your coaching clients from?
They are people who have either found me online, they've listened to a podcast, or they read one of my books. And almost every time I've looked at your material, I've heard you speak, or I've read your book, and what you're saying really resonates with me. I like that style. I like what you're doing. I want you to help me do it. So almost always it's because they've already established a connection with me through something. One, they read my blog regularly. I have an article that comes out once a week on something about finance, or they've read my book or heard me on a podcast. And after that, they've said, I want that guy to be my coach. Almost everybody comes from that method.
Fabulous. That's great. Out of everything that you have going on right now, you're building a house and you're doing your coaching and everything else that's your new book. Out of everything that's going on right now, what are you most excited about? What's holding most of your interest at this time?
I would say probably the new house, and mostly because it's new. It's a new thing. I've been coaching for a while. I've been writing books for a while, but building a house is a brand new thing. We've never done that. And so I think the excitement of the new house is captivating me the most. And the builder that we're using, he wants everything lined up before we start. So before we even broke ground, we're picking out every faucet, every light fixture, the carpet, the floor, getting everything picked out. So he knows how much that this is going to cost to build. Mm-hmm. And I kind of expected that to happen as we went. Okay, we're doing plumbing now, pick something out, but we're picking it all out ahead of time. So it's been quite an endeavor to go shopping and find all these things. It's kind of cool that I'm stuck home anyway. It would be hard to do this off the coast of Brazil. So the timing worked out really well for that. And it's gotten very exciting now that we actually see the dirt moving on the lot, and this is turning into something real. That's probably the biggest excitement right now.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's really cool. If we were to have you back on the show again, let's say a year from now, and we were to look back over what had happened over the last 12 months, what would have had to have happened for you to feel happy with the progress concerning your life, your business, and everything?
Well, I'm a pretty happy guy in general. So it's kind of like I'm one of the things you need to make your own happiness.
Yeah.
If things aren't good, then change it. In the back of my business card, it says, if you want something to change, then you got to change something. And I'm kind of that kind of person. So I'm not sure that there's something that would have to happen to make me happy, but I can tell you something that's going to change my life in the next year that would be totally different is my very first grandchild comes in January.
Oh, wow.
So we will be in the middle of building a house. My son is also in the middle of buying a new house that he's going to be remodeling and having a new baby. So I figure this time next year, I think there will be a lot of changes in the things I talk about that might relate to having a grandchild and how the grandchild changes one's life. I could see our traveling slowing down. So we're not gone 58% of the time. We're home more often to see the grandchild and to help. Both of them work. And so they'll probably want, some grandpa time so they can go work while I get to play with the kids. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I've been waiting for a grandchild for a while, and now it's going to happen. So I think that's going to be the biggest life change next year. I'm also going to try and get all of my books into audio format in the next few months. I've been getting lots of requests for that. A lot of doctors do commuting back, and they don't really have time to read a book, but they have time to listen to one in their car on the way to work and back. So I'm going to try and get the books into audio form to help those people. But I'm kind of excited about things that are happening with the new house and a new grandchild. Life is pretty good.
That's great. That's really great to see all those things you have out in front of you. And I'd love to chat with you some more, but I think this is great for now, and we'll have you back on the show in the future. What could a listener do who would like to find out more about either your books or your courses or your coaching or anything else that read your blog? Where would we send them?
FinancialSuccessMD.com. That is my webpage, and all of that stuff can be found on the webpage. On the top left, you're going to find courses that I've done online, and there'll be more of those coming down the pike. You can click on a link to see all the different books and some descriptions and what other people have said about it. You can contact me for coaching, or if you have questions. Everything starts by going to the website, FinancialSuccessMD.com. And you can find out all about me. There's other places, and you can find them there. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and Facebook, so there's lots of places to connect. But if you started there, I think you'll find what it is you're looking for.
Wow, what an interesting life that you lead, Dr. Cory. Thanks so much for being with us here on Grants Pass VIP.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm going to be honest with you. Oftentimes, I will go into these conversations and know very little about the person I'm about to talk to, other than just some very minor concept. And Cory was one of these people that I did not know a whole lot about when we first initially started talking. And it's great because I got to learn so much. And it's amazing how so many of the concepts that he's put into play in his life, that they're principles that I've been able to see other people be able to do the same thing with. They're even, some of the principles are things that I've helped people do directly. And so I'd like to point some of these things out because this is really great stuff. First of all, I think his attitude is the main thing that's kept him going and kept him jumping from success to success. I mean, he says, you never know where you're going to go. And he just has this easygoing, carefree attitude about life and just has fun with it and just takes it from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and nothing too heavy. And I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that has helped him out throughout his lifetime. If you look at the success that he's been able to have in just taking these ideas that he learned from somebody else, or things that he learned through experience, a mixture of what he's done on his own and what he's learned from other places. And all he did was he turned those into speeches and books. One thing led to another, led to another, led to another. But that's all it really takes to be successful in one of these areas. To be successful and to be, pretty much labeled as an expert in what it is that you do. And if you're interested in doing any type of information marketing in the same way that Cory Fawcett has done, I definitely suggest you re-listen to this conversation because there's so many great nuggets in there. If you just look at his Doctor's Guide to series on its own and how he just took this one audience that he knew could use these same things, that you could find out this information in other places, but he took it and he was able to tailor it directly to this audience, even though he mentioned that some of these books you can pick up off of Amazon.com or wherever, and you could read them even if you're not a doctor and get great use out of it. But because he tailored it to doctors, it's allowed him to stand out as the Doctor's Guide to expert, in a sense. Very cool, great stories. I can't wait to hear more from Dr. Cory in the future. It's just a great conversation.
Join us again on the next Grants Pass VIP, brought to you by the team at BrianJPombo.com, helping movers and shakers in Southern Oregon and beyond stand out. That's BrianJPombo.com. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest or a sponsor on Grants Pass VIP, go to grantspassvip.com/contact. Guests who appear on the show do not necessarily endorse the opinions of the host or sponsors. Our theme music is Funshine by Kevin MacLeod. Our host is a Grants Pass resident and business strategist, Brian Pombo. I'm executive producer Sean E. Douglas. Until next time, live rogue and have fun.